Hey everybody, welcome to the mobile edition of the Fittish Dad podcast. You are joining me today from my drive home from work. It has been a wild week for me, so I know this video is getting out late. And obviously we're having to, pull an audible and get things done. But it works great for what I want to talk about this week. It's going to be a shorter video because obviously situation is not conducive to a long video. And I only have such a far drive home from work. But this week is wild because we have our yearly church conference, and also with training, I've been getting up early and doing training. So that means I am now filming this video on my way home from work or technically on my way to church from work because this is where I could get it fit in. And so with that being said, I'm going to segue into what I want to talk about today. And I want to talk about how to manage, your health with your time. When I talk to guys, and I work with mostly guys, but when I talk to people in general, the biggest, setback or the biggest thing that keeps them from, starting to really take control of their health, and I want to work out, I want to start running, I want to lose 10 pounds, I want to run a marathon, whatever it may be. I just don't have the time. So where do you find the time? Because I get that asked a lot, is you do this, you do all these things, where do you find the time to train? Where do you find the time to do all this stuff? And honestly, so you just have to, number one, you have to make the time. So I get up at, the past couple of days, I've gotten up at 4:30. So that way I could start running and working out by 5. So that way I could be done by 6:15, 6:30 to get ready to go to work. And even in days when that doesn't happen, that means I'm doing it at 10, 11 p.m. when everybody else is asleep and all my other responsibilities and priorities are taken care of. And it requires some flexibility. It requires some discipline and commitment. But I just want to share a few things with you that hopefully, number one, encourage you, but also, challenge you and give you some tips and motivation in order to take control of your time and figure out how to properly prioritize in order to fit in all the things that are necessary to live a full and healthy life. Because time is the only non-renewable resource that we really have in our life. Everything else can be figured out, can be supplemented, can be, added to, but not time. Time is very limited, and everybody has the same amount. Now, not everybody has the same amount of priorities and responsibilities. So if I was, when I was 18 and single and, worked an iffy job and didn't have any responsibilities, I had a lot of free time and a lot of flexibility in that time. More flexibility than I have now at 28 with a wife, a child, a semi-important job, and a lot of other priorities with being a leader at church and all these different things that I have responsibility for, or I have taken responsibility for. And so the requirement of me to be very intentional with how I schedule and how I prioritize my time in my life is very different than, obviously when I was 18 and single and had no child and, not, anything important going on in my life. And so it's different for everybody, but everybody does have the same quantity of time. And I like to talk about it like people will talk about budgets. Is the same thing when people say, I don't have enough money for stuff, is a lot of times is, okay, well, what does your budget look like? When people who, unless, obviously there's exceptions for everything. But it said exceptions are what prove the rule because they are exceptions. It said they are outliers. But for the most part, like, people, if they're making halfway, like a livable income and stuff like that, it's, oh, I just don't have any money for this, this, and this, and this. It's like, okay, well, what's your spending look like? And most of the time they say, oh, I don't even know. And then you look through it and you find out they're spending money on a bunch of crap that they don't need, or, the luxuries that they can't afford. And, I myself am guilty of doing that, on multiple occasions. And the same thing is, same thing happens with people's time is, they budget more they budget more times towards things that don't matter, that don't service them, that don't forward their life, or progress their life in a way that they want it to go. But and a lot of the problem is they're very passive about how they manage their time. They're very reactionary and passive on how they live their life in terms of budgeting their time. As I said, they just go with the flow, or they just let things happen and they try to fit in everything, or they are more want they're more want driven than they are need driven. And what I mean by that is, they prioritize things that are not responsibilities but are luxuries, like watching TV, playing video games, doing stuff that not that there's anything wrong with those things, but that can take away from time to do things that are a priority to them, if their time is mismanaged, if their time budget is mismanaged. Because I used to struggle with that all the time. Said I would, spend all this time. Number one, especially coming from, from addiction, somebody who struggled with addiction and depression, is I would spend hours focused on, finding a way to appease the itch of my addiction, or would spend hours doing nothing and laying there just out of shame and guilt and depression and all that sort of thing. And it would eat up my time and my ability to really do anything that would get me where I wanted to go in life. And then I would say, I don't have any time or anything like that. Oh, if I had the time, blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't until I decided that I was going to not allow my emotions or my feelings to control how I spent my time. And I also wasn't going to be passive and reactive and allow time to happen to me, and allow life to happen to me. I was going to take an active and proactive part of my life and start to control my schedule. And a lot of that is, and here's the first tip in order to start taking control of your time and your schedule and your health, is to learn the word no. Said, I have this joke, I say it. It started with my wife. She has a younger sister that is 16 years younger than her. And when we first got married, her little sister spent a lot of time with us. And so we, obviously, would spend a lot of time with us throughout the week and stuff like that. And so she would obviously go grocery shopping with us and go, almost pretty much be like a part of our weekly, daily lives. And I would always make the joke of when she would ask for something and say, what's my favorite word? And she would say, no. That's right. Said, my answer is no. Which I actually got from my dad, who also said the same thing. And now I understand why. But is the importance of no. Is that I had a counselor tell me one time, when I was first started going into counseling and really dealing with, like I said, addiction and depression and everything like that, and a whole plethora of other things I had to deal with, because it turns out those were just symptoms of true issues. When I started dealing with those issues, a lot of time I found out is people who are people pleasers, or people who are very passive in their life, or have trouble with addiction and depression, all those things, is they have a hard time saying no to things for whatever reason. And I remember he told me, he said, no, for most things, no should be your automatic answer, because he said, the more you say no to the things that you don't want to do, or that don't serve you, or that don't, help you towards your purpose and vision in life, the more you're able to say yes to the things that do. Because what happens if you say yes to everything, then you end up saying no to things that truly matter to you. And not everybody gets your yes. And it's a lot easier to say no to something and come back and say yes to it later. But what that looks like is, in my own personal life, is I love movies, I love TV, I love, video games. And a lot of that stems from, escapism. And like I said, obviously, I used it as a crutch with depression and everything. I would just go and engross myself in movies and TV and stories and stuff like that because I was avoiding the reality of life. And I said I was being very passive and very reactionary and allowing my emotions to control how I handled my time in my life. And I would not say no to any impulse. And it was not saying no to those impulses that caused me not to be able to say yes to the things that I really wanted to do, to the dreams that I had, and to the life I wanted to live and the man I wanted to be. So that I was controlled by my inability to say no out of impulse. And said my wife, and her problem is she's a big people. I say problem. The things she struggled with. She's not a problem. She's wonderful, and I love her. Her issue, the thing she struggled with, is she is, and she's not as much anymore. She's doing outstanding work. Like I said, she's awesome, and I love her. But is people pleasing, and so she would just say yes to everybody and everything because she didn't want to, she couldn't say no to people because she was too worried about what they'd think or how they would react or whatever, anything like that. So she was very passive and reactive and was allowing other people to control her time versus her. And it wasn't until both of us began to realize that it was up to us to take control of our own time and our own lives and establish our own boundaries and priorities and take responsibility for our own decisions and for our own lives, that we really begin to see a change and a focus on our ability to do the things that we were required to do in order to achieve the things that we always desired to achieve. And so we had to start saying no to things. You have to start saying no to, people. I mean, you may have to say no to your family. I can't do that right now. I have this going on. You may say no to friends. Guys, I can't go hang out. I can't go do this. I can't go spend this money. Instead, I have to, I'm doing this. So I have to get up early. It happens a lot. I said, I have to get up early tomorrow. So I'm not going out. I'm going to bed. So I know I'd love to stay up and watch this movie, watch this TV, scroll on TikTok, all that sort of thing. But I can't, because my priority and my responsibility and the boundaries I have set for myself and for other people are, this is what I am setting my priorities for. It's like I have to have sleep. I have to do these things. And you start with, and we'll take it to number 2, is you need to figure out your priorities. Figure out what your priorities are. What's your main responsibilities in life? What are things that you have to do? Like, obviously your responsibilities. Like, if you have a spouse, you have to spend time with them. That's a requirement. And I don't care what anybody else says. You are required to spend time with them. And that's not out of while it is a duty, it's not out of oh, fine, I guess I'll spend time with them. So you should want to spend time with them because it's important and it's necessary in order to have a fulfilling and marriage. But number 2, obviously, is like, if you have a child, you have a responsibility to spend time with your children. So if you have a job, you have a responsibility to do what is required for your job. And even then, you still need to set boundaries within your job of, like, no, I don't do this because this time belongs to my family. So this is the time that, whatever it may be. And obviously things are flexible depending on job, but you need to come up with those priorities for yourself. Is that and then after you get all your priorities from top to bottom, then you go, okay, so every day these are my priorities. Number one, I spend time with the Lord. I said, I pray, I read my Bible and my worship every day, no matter what. And I said, I fit that in first and foremost. That is number one priority. And the reason it's number one priority is because that takes care of a lot with my number two priority, which is my spouse, my wife. And then, so number two is 2A and 2B. Said my spouse, my wife is top priority in my family, because my relationship with my wife dictates how the relationship with my children go. So number 2A is prioritize, obviously, the time necessary in order to fulfill my responsibilities as a father. Number 3 goes to my, to my health and my training, because number 3, that number 1 helps with number 3 helps with number 1 and number 2, and also because I need to take care of myself in order to best be able to serve number 1 and number 2. And then number 4 is my job. And I said, and 3 and 4 can be interchangeable depending on, the season of life, because sometimes, with work, this is going to have to take priority over, and I said, not necessarily like I'm cutting one out for the other, but more priority. So it's like, if I have to cut something back, it's going to be, training for whatever reason, because I need to handle this right now because it's my responsibility. And then after that, I can start adding the things. Okay, so after I do all those things, then I have obviously podcast and content and coaching and all the other things that I'm working on building up, and those probably, hopefully, go to a higher priority in the future, because I want those to start taking off to where those eventually become my full-time job. So and that also takes part of training and stuff like that. But I said, each their own. There's not a one size fits all when it comes to priorities and boundaries with your time. Said, and then I fit in things. Okay, after that, I have time here to watch a movie, to do whatever I want to do. That's a leisure activity. And those are things that if I never do those things, it is not going to subtract from the quality of my life, nor is it going to cause me to miss out on my responsibilities that are required of me as a father, a husband, a man, an employee, whatever it may be. And so it's important that you set those priorities, and then you follow those priorities, and you stick to that budget. You prioritize your time budget, or you order your time budget by priority. So you need to figure out what your priorities are. And so that's number 2. Number 1, learn to say no. Say no to the things that do not serve you and that take away and lose your time, so that way you can say yes to the things that you really want to say yes to. Number 2, I said, is you have to figure out what your priorities are. Number 3 is, after that, you figure out your priorities. And this is, it's number 3, but without it, number 1 and number 2 will fall apart. Number 3 is you have to be disciplined and committed. I talk about 4 a.m. and 10 p.m. and stuff like that, and that's not because, the kind of like not because like a David Goggins, like, I'm out here, or Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant was like, well, I'm out here working, y'all out here. It's because I made a commitment to myself that I was going to do these things. I made a commitment that I was going to train to run a 100-mile race. And I am going to keep that commitment to myself. And that's where the discipline comes in. Because I very, 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 very rarely want to or feel like it at 4 a.m. or 10 p.m. As a matter of fact, I feel the exact opposite. Most of the time, I am negotiating with myself as I'm going to do it. And so but I always tell myself, I committed to this, and it may suck, but I committed to it. It said, I would rather it suck and get it done and not let myself down and keep my word and my promise to myself than to take the easy way out, to let myself down, and to prove myself right. What I mean prove myself right is I prove that doubt that sits in the back of my head that tells me, nah, you can't do it. that you'll fail, that you'll give up like you always do. And I want to tell that piece of crap voice in my head, no, because this is I put in the work no matter how I feel, no matter what is happening. I've committed and I'm staying disciplined to the work that is required to achieve the things that I want to do. So you have to find that commitment and that discipline. And the only way to build the commitment is the discipline is, number one, you make a decision. And you have to set it in your mind that when you make a decision, it is happening no matter what. So no matter what you have to do to get it to happen, that changing those plans is not an option. Now, there are very few times where I'd be like, okay, okay, I'm gonna change it because other priorities. Like if I was sick, obviously like there's stuff there. Or if number one, if something, my time with God, or my relationship with God, or my relationship with my wife and child, if there's an issue or conflict there, those win no matter what. That is the only time where I am okay with making, and then it's like I'm not doing it. I'm just making a change. So that's when I cut out other things. Say, oh, these things that I thought I had time to do, not doing them. Hence why sometimes I'm running at 10 p.m. It's because I had these other things I wanted to do, or wanted to do it earlier. I said, okay, or if I mismanaged my priorities and said, I would really like to go to sleep right now, but I made and it only happens a few times. But when you keep that discipline, when you keep those promises to yourself, and you make yourself do it, even when it's inconvenient or you don't want to, you only do it a couple times before you realize that that it's better off if you just keep your original promise to yourself and you get up at 4 a.m. to go do it, because you want to go to bed at 10 p.m. But it's just, you have to be committed. You have to be disciplined. You have to keep your promises to yourself, because that even though I said it's number 3, that was probably the hardest part for me to do as someone who has so easily given up and made excuses for everything. And that brings me, that's not even its own point. That's part of this point. Stop making excuses. I've said this probably on like most of my videos. Stop making excuses. Excuses don't mean crap. Nobody cares. What is it? Excuses are like armpits. Everybody has them and they all stink. Stop making excuses and take control of your dadgum life and make decisions that are going to service the dreams that God has put in your heart. Quit being a little child and put in the time, the effort, the work, the commitment, the discipline. Stop making excuses and get the things done that are necessary for you to achieve the desires and dreams that God has placed in your heart. And that applies to everything, not just getting up early to go running. That applies to everything. Stop making excuses. Stop making excuses and find a solution. There is a solution. Find it. Said if you can't find it, humble yourself, pray, and God will give you a solution. It says in James chapter 1. I wasn't going to do a Devo because I'm trying to do this while driving, but we'll just go ahead and throw this in there. James chapter 1, it says, if any of you lack wisdom, ask and the Lord will give it to you. He will not withhold it from you. I'm sorry if this is like beaten. I don't know what the sound is going to be like, but so this is important. Is stop making excuses. Stop making excuses. No more. I remember sitting with that same counselor that talked about all this with me, like 4 or 5 years ago. I was talking to him all this, like it was like one of the first or second session, and he was scribbling stuff as I'm talking and stuff like that. And then finally he tore off this little sticky note and he said, here, I've got your prescription for all of your issues. And he slapped it down on my hand or my desk, I don't remember, whatever it was. And it said, and he had scribbled it to look like a prescription pad. And he said, no more excuses. And I still have it. I still have it in the little booklet that, the work booklet that we were going through. I said, no more excuses. He said, quit making excuses. He said, if you stop making excuses, all of this will really honestly begin to work itself out because you have no other choice. So that being said, got a little tense there. This is supposed to be a fun and lighthearted podcast, but here we are. I've this is totally off, but I think it's just so funny. Like, I just can go from like really lighthearted stuff to like feel like I'm a David Goggins, or like almost preaching while I'm trying to talk about fitness, and I'm trying to encourage you guys and make you want to start doing it. But hopefully I respond well to that. That's what I need. So if anybody's like, oh wow, he's so like that, so this is what I respond to. That I don't respond to coddling. I don't respond well, and I don't think most men respond well. And like I said, I know that maybe women, stuff like that. I know how to talk to men because I am a man, and I mostly work with men because, like I said, I'm a man, so I know how it works for men. I have no problem with with working with women. It's just not my specialty because I've never been a woman before, and I never will be one. I don't get into stuff like that, but I'm just going to leave that there. But rant over, moving on to the fourth point and the final point. Wow, it's already been 20, 25, 26 minutes. I've been talking a lot longer than I thought I have. But point number 4. So let me go over this. Make sure I'm in the right spot. Number 1, learn to say no. Number 2, get your priorities straight. Number 3, make a decision. Commit. Said make a decision, commit, and be disciplined. And then number 4. What was number 4? Where's number 4? Number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't have my notes with me, so I can't look at my notes. So I'm trying to remember what I wrote down. What is number 4? Number 4. I'll probably edit this all out while I'm trying to remember number 4. It's kind of hard, I'm driving. I'm trying to pay attention, and my registration's out, so I gotta be on the lookout for cops to make sure I don't get pulled over. And also, not get in a wreck and kill anybody, because that would be a terrible thing to happen on the first mobile edition of the Fittest Dad podcast, right? You don't want that. I don't want that. Nobody wants that. And so I'm just saying all this to try to give myself time and buy time to remember what number 4 was, but I can't. Maybe there wasn't a number 4. Maybe, you know what I think it was? I think I kind of initially, you know what? I did. I said it. No excuses. That was, I said, it's not really number 4. It's part of number 3. So, but, I'm going to, number 4, no making excuses, because we'll just go with that. No excuses. Stop making excuses. No more excuses. You hear me? That's your prescription. That's your prescription for this week and for the rest of your life. Stop making excuses and start making choices. Make a decision, commit, and stay disciplined to your own health and to your own life. Take control of your life and stop complaining, because you are responsible for yourself. Nobody else can do it for you. Only you can. That's what I'm going to end with, because that's all I got. So thank you for joining me this week on the Fittest Dad podcast, on our very first episode of the mobile Fittest Dad podcast. It will hopefully be the only one to ever happen, but you never know. I said, here I am, fitting it in, making it happen, just like we've been talking about. Committed, disciplined, no excuses. Love you guys. Hopefully I'll like this one. We'll see how it goes. But it's here. It may not be the best one, but it's done. I stay committed. I kept the promise to myself and to my producers to get this out. So, thanks, guys. I'll see you later. Bye.